Have you ever had a mini crisis while holding the bill at a restaurant in America? Not because the food was too expensive, but because you didn't know how much to tip to be just right. 10% is considered disrespectful, 15% is average, and 20% is finally reasonable, and if you don't tip at all, be ready to be stared at like you're from another planet. Sound familiar? Seriously, tipping culture in the US is one of the most common culture shocks for foreigners. In fact, it tops many travel blogs' lists of weird food facts about America that leave tourists speechless. And you know what's fascinating? In many other countries, tipping is optional, even seen as insulting if you do it. So, why do Americans tip? And why has tipping in America become so deeply ingrained, almost like a moral duty? If you've ever traveled to the US and gotten confused by that final bill, or if your American friends have politely reminded you about tipping, go ahead and comment. I've been confused by tipping in the US. Or I had a really weird tipping experience. I'm reading all the comments to see who's on team follow the rules, and who wishes for a clear price chart. Now let me rehook you a bit. If you think tipping is just a small reward for good service, this next story might have you tilting your head, asking, is this really a reward, or a responsibility? Let's rewind some history. Many people think American tipping came from Europe. And that's partly true. In the 17th and 18th centuries, British aristocrats coined the term tip, short for to ensure promptitude. It meant they handed over money ahead of time, to ensure priority treatment. Like, I tip you now, so remember to serve me well. After the Civil War, post-1865, wealthy Americans who traveled to Europe brought this habit back with them. But the ironic part is, many Americans at the time hated tipping. A 1902 newspaper even called tipping a shameful custom from the European continent. They argued it ruined equality, because now workers served not out of responsibility, but for bonus money. So what changed tipping from a dishonorable practice into something almost mandatory? The answer lies in injustice itself. After slavery was abolished in the US, many black Americans sought work in service jobs, hotels, restaurants, railways. But instead of being paid fairly, they were forced to live off tips from customers. It was a legal way for business owners to avoid paying wages, pushing that burden onto customers instead. See? What looks like a system of give and take actually began with exploitation and inequality. And isn't that one of the more painful weird food facts of American history? That a simple gesture like tipping has roots in inequality, not generosity. If you always thought tipping was just a polite gesture, this might be a hard truth to swallow. And that's why today, many Americans, especially younger generations, are starting to question the tipping system. They ask, why not just pay workers fairly, instead of making the customer carry that weight? Have you ever thought that too? If yes, drop a comment. Tipping should be optional, not an obligation. Or if you've worked in a job where tipping mattered, share your story. I believe your experience can help others understand both sides of the story. Why does the whole idea of customers paying wages instead of employers, something that sounds totally backwards, still exist in America today? Well, the answer is very American, a mix of habit plus culture plus legal loopholes, all tangled like a bowl of spaghetti. It sounds funny, but it's true. In the early 20th century, instead of eliminating tipping like many European countries did, the US legalized it. By 1938, the Fair Labor Standards Act allowed restaurants to pay workers below minimum wage, as long as tips made up the difference. Meaning, you could legally pay a server only $2-3 per hour, a rate that still exists in many US states, as long as customer tips boosted their total earnings to the federal minimum wage. Sound crazy yet? But it doesn't stop at restaurants. Tipping culture in America spread across industries. Taxi drivers, tip. Hair stylists, tip. Makeup artists, tip. Delivery drivers, tip. Hotel bellhops, tip. And recently, I even saw a vending machine at the airport asking if I wanted to leave a tip. A vending machine, you guys. Who even gets that money? It's one of those weird food facts that sounds made up, but it's real. So now, in the US, tipping is no longer a bonus. It's part of the economic system in the service industry. Restaurant owners say, if we get rid of tipping, we'd have to raise food prices a lot. But service workers ask, why can other industries pay fair wages, but hospitality has to rely on the kindness of strangers? One server once told me, tips help me survive. But every time a customer walks away without leaving anything, I feel invisible. That's a deeply human feeling. And that's why tipping, even just a few dollars, carries so much emotion, pressure, and moral complexity. What about you? Have you ever felt awkward or guilty about not tipping enough? Comment, tipping made me anxious before. Or if you're always a 20% tip kind of person, comment, I'm a generous tipper. Let's inspire others. Actually, tipping in America reflects something deeper, the value of freedom of choice, but also the transfer of responsibility that no one wants to admit. Customers have the freedom to tip, or not. But who dares to not tip in an American restaurant? You might get cold stares, or even called out online. And workers? They're stuck serving kindly even when they're not sure if they'll be compensated at all. There's a bitter joke that goes, in America, tipping is optional, just like breathing is optional. It sounds funny, but hits a little too close to home. So you see, behind every bill is a mix of history, culture, and emotion. And also a few weird food facts that shape how people behave every day. If you're listening to this podcast in a cafe or planning a trip to the US, remember, tipping isn't just polite, it's part of an unwritten rulebook. Ever had an awkward tipping moment? Do you agree with this system? Share your thoughts in the comments. Because it's these small stories that help us realize, behind every receipt is a piece of cultural identity. You know what's the most fascinating part about tipping in America? It's not just the few dollars left behind, or the debate over whether you should or shouldn't tip. It's how tipping reveals the way Americans think, about freedom, responsibility, and compassion. Tipping isn't about right or wrong. It's like a mirror, reflecting how society values service, labor, and emotional connection between people. Some tip because the service was excellent. Some tip because they don't want to be judged. Some tip because everyone else does. And some tip, simply because they want to make someone feel seen that day. A small act, carrying a heavy weight of kindness and humanity. I once sat at a roadside diner in Chicago. The table next to mine was a big family, loud, demanding, letting their kids make a mess. The server kept smiling, cleaned up chopsticks on the floor, refilled every glass. At the end, the whole family walked out, without tipping a cent. I saw the server's face. Not exactly angry. Not visibly sad. Just, blank. I walked over, left a $10 bill, not much, and quietly said, thanks for being patient with us, and with them. She smiled. For the first time that entire shift. And you know what? That's when I realized, tipping may be money, but it's also a thank you. A silent nod between humans. A cup of coffee, $5. A meal, $15. A smile from the server, priceless. That feeling of doing something kind for someone, no receipt needed, but always worth it. If you've made it this far and feel the same way, leave a comment. Tipping isn't just money, it's gratitude. Or simply, I've worked in service, and I get it. Let's spread kindness together. Because in today's world, even the simplest weird food facts can teach us something profound about who we are. And if you love podcasts like this, where history, culture, and everyday life come together in a simple yet meaningful way, don't forget to follow the channel. We've got many more stories ahead, the kind that sound ordinary but make you go wow. Thanks so much for sticking with me till the end. I hope that from now on, every time you tip, or don't, you'll remember. It's not just a habit. It's part of America's story, a nation built on freedom, still wrestling with how to express fairness. And whether you're listening from a diner, on your commute, or in the middle of a busy day, try commenting. Tipping, a small act with a big meaning. Let's see how many of us feel the same way.